So the reason it's really important to understand why so many people have issue with Trump deporting, and many of them being the far right or far left radicals and the communists, is because, see, during the Cold War, again, that's why the JFK files are fascinating, because it's really telling you what was going on from what the CIA was seeing, and it was all this guerrilla tactics training going on in Cuba. Cuba had their own propaganda radio, liberation radio, but it was all propaganda during World War II. And then after World War II, 15 years after it, we get JFK. Okay, well, we get Roosevelt and the New Deal, and the Kennedys helping, Roosevelt getting in. But then, the Kennedys, again, were all tied to the aristocrats. And I want to separate RFK Jr., I don't want to attack all the Kennedys, but I've never really trusted RFK Jr. But look, he's in Trump's administration. He seems to be trying to do what he thinks is right. And so, I'll separate him. Okay? That said, the Kennedys were, Nazi sympathizers. Okay? So you have that problem going on. Then you got MLK again, and he did have some ties to, he had some communists in his Southern Christian Conference organization. He said he fired them. But see, the problem is that his organization wanted to align with socialists, communists, anybody. And communists, internationally or nationally, will align with people that they don't necessarily agree with, because in numbers, it was all about destroying America. I don't think James Earl Ray killed Kennedy. I don't. I mean, he said he only took the plea deal because they were going to give him the death penalty. But from the very next day on, he said, no, I didn't pull the trigger. Okay? These communists, not just here, but they had all colluded. I'm going to show you. It's all through the MLK files. So it's one thing. What AI will tell you is that, it just shows how they were historically, abusing MLK. No, FBI had reason to monitor him. They did, okay? He has this huge movement going on in America. He seems to only be interested in bringing Africans here. And that is the other problem. You're bringing people here that really don't care about America's values. And this is how they got these people in, that many of them being tied to communist groups, to international labor unions, to socialist groups, all deciding on an international level and national, we are going to band together to take down the systemic, racist, horrible country called America. Bastards they are, all of them. Really. And it's all through the MLK files. Let me show you. Because you're watching these podcasters now continue this, because it's a revolution for them. And see, King was more about the peaceful revolution, but he should have never aligned with the stuff that he did. If these black civil rights leaders wanted to care about the black community, then fundraise for the black Americans. Instead, they have all been on this international stage wanting every black person to identify and recognize America as this racist country. When really it's like, well, if you cared about black Americans, don't you think you should just be focusing there? Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, MLK. But then if MLK got tied in because he wanted, mass, all these groups coming together, believe me, communists won't hesitate to take you out. Because by taking MLK out, and I don't think we'll ever know who really did it, but it gave the communists and Cuba and all of the people that hated America internationally and nationally the chance to say this. So I'm not going to read all this, but up here it's talking about how All of these Negro organizations are divided into two groups, violent and nonviolent. There's only two that are nonviolent, one being King's and the other being, I think it's the National Association for Advancement of Colored People. But again, all, tying together with each other. The rest of these, the Black Panther Party, Blackstone Rangers, the Alert Patrol, they all wanted revolution against America, violent revolution. And MLK was their chance to push their systemic racism crap. As you can see here, this Radio Liberation, I think that was tied to this, see this GRANMMA? That stands for the Cuba Propaganda News, and that was running during the Cold War too. So down here, Radio Liberation and Radio Progreso and Havana radio stations, April 6th, 7 a.m. and 12 noon. The chief of the missions, the chief of the missions to Cuba of the South Vietnamese National Liberation Front has sent a message to Afro-Americans on the assassination of the leader Martin Luther King. This message says that the crime which was committed against Martin Luther King unmasks the evil face of the rulers and fascists of the United States. The message of the Vietnamese mission in Havana ends by saying that with the assassination of Luther King, all that has been accomplished by the rulers of the United States is to pour oil onto the flames of the struggle of African Americans. So basically, like you can see here, these radio signals, these short sentences here, like because the GRANMA is the Cuba propaganda media. You can see attempts are being made to blame Carmichael for the outbreak of racial violence in the U.S. Clashes between Negro and white American soldiers in Japan. So they were just pouring fuel onto the fire, okay, with their propaganda internationally. American Negro people, martyrs of the Negro struggle. That's what they wanted, was the overthrow of America. That is what CIA and FBI have tried to, well, before they became, infiltrated with communists, that is. Because if the CIA and FBI had been what they were prior to Kennedy and everything going to shit, prior to JFK, we likely would have not suffered 9/11. Really. So what they wanted to do is use King's death to say, look at the horrible people of America. Now look at Candace Owens, because it all ties to the same thing. The same thing they've done to the black community, to the white community in America, with their propaganda and their bullshit about our systemic racism, is the same shit that the Nazis did to the German people, to where they eventually believed that, no, we must get rid of the Jews. Nazi media systemically dehumanized Jews by portraying them as subhuman creatures such as rats, lice, parasites, and vermin. This animalistic imagery suggested Jews were dangerous, contaminating force that needed to be eradicated. Nazi propaganda denied Jews the capacity for human feeling and moral consideration, depicting them instead as inherently evil, scheming, and agenic enemies responsible for society's problems. Such dehumanization gradually increased in intensity leading up to and during the Holocaust, facilitating public acceptance of violence against Jews by stripping them of their humanity and justifying their extermination. From the Holocaust. So don't listen to the Candace Owens. They're just the revolutionaries trying to take down America.